You both have said authenticity. You actually opened with it, and it really stuck with me. And I'm curious if you could expand a little bit more when you say it might not necessarily be that we're desperate for more churches, but maybe more authentic churches. Unpack that a little bit more, Warren.
This is our DNA, but we go against kind of what our DNA is or what our ultimate mission is, because we want to become all things to all people. And it almost waters down like the mission or the original vision or idea behind the church.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the MxU Podcast. We are on location this episode, as they say. We are in Arlington, Texas, in the DFW Metroplex. We're doing an MxU pop-up tomorrow at Milestone Church. So we're here the night before recording a little podcast.
In Warren's hometown.
Yeah, so Warren Davis from Life Church is here.
Hey, everybody.
And you grew up here, right? In the area?
I did. Grew up here, got to spend most of my formative years wreaking havoc on the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Is this Dallas or is this Fort Worth? Because I don't want to make a mistake.
This would have to be more Dallas, I guess, because the Dallas Cowboys play about a quarter mile away from here. So
we are in Arlington, and
it's Arlington.
Jerry's World is just down the street.
Yeah.
Jerry.
Did you see it coming in?
Oh, I saw it coming in.
I mean, that is a place. You ever been there?
I haven't. I'm not a Dallas fan.
No, you're not a Cowboys fan. But
No.
as NFL sanctuaries go, it is a pretty impressive building.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
It's cool from the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's people either don't like the Dallas Cowboys or they're fans and they still don't like the Dallas Cowboys. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the way it goes.
And then Max Williams is here also from
Maximilian
Williams.
Will.
a repeat offender of the MxU podcast. So,
That's right.
Yeah. It's good to have you guys.
Thank you. It's good to be
Mhm.
here. Thank
Yeah.
you for having us.
How do you guys, really quick, how do you guys know each other?
So, I met Warren in Vegas.
Yeah.
No,
At
was
the NAB show. So
Yeah.
obviously we're connected through Summit and known each other, I guess, tangentially through that relationship, but we didn't really get to connect through, I guess, in person until this past year.
No, I think there was like some pass by hello moments through the years, but nothing. Our first like really deep talk was this past year.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was just one of those, like, we were sitting down, just connecting, talked probably for 2 hours, 3 hours. And it was
at
like
least, yeah.
life, ministry, kids,
Kids,
family, all that implies.
above.
And it was,
There's probably some tears being shed somewhere.
yeah.
Well, it's funny because I've had those kind of conversations with each of you. And so I know that you're both highly capable in that area. So doing it together was probably one of those moments where it's like, okay, we're going to be solid friends here.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a cool moment.
It was interesting because it was just like, how have we not like already made this connection? And then it was just an immediate like friendship, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we were saying a lot of the same things. It was funny because he was in a conversation talking about similar things that I was talking about, and I was in a different conversation. And then our conversation just kind of merged. So it's kind of cool how it happened.
Nice. Very good. Well, we have a pop-up event tomorrow.
Yeah.
Dallas is kind of we've been here. When's the first year? You'll be able to educate us. The first year we came to Dallas.
Well, we did, we did several of our MxU Live mixing events in Dallas over the years.
Yeah.
And then the MxU Live tour in 21, we were in Fort Worth, actually.
Yep.
And then 22, I think we came to Dallas as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been to Dallas a bunch. And then
Love
I've been to
Dallas.
Dallas in other capacities a lot over the years. So
Yeah.
Dallas, you can't think of large church world without putting Dallas near the top of the list.
There are churches
Yeah.
everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah, this is definitely a hub. There's a lot of churches in Dallas. All over the South, but
Yeah.
definitely Dallas.
But part of what I'm excited about is, we've done these pop-up events regionally as a way for local churches to network and connect with each other. And I will say, tomorrow there's probably going to be 150 people in the room.
Wow.
And they're from a lot of different churches.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a great opportunity for the DFW area to connect with each other and learn from what each other's doing.
Yeah.
And, hopefully these pop-ups have been kind of a model for, our hope was it would be a model for how churches who are down the street from each other can actually break bread, get to know each other, sit around tables, have great conversations, pour into each other, share good ideas. And, so far, I think it's been a pretty great success. So tomorrow I'm really excited about because it's going to be our largest one and probably the most churches represented too. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to a good time.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting, especially in this area. I don't know culturally like how much churches in this area connect in that way. So it's gonna be really cool
Yeah.
to see that amount of churches in the room rubbing shoulders together.
Yeah, we find, in most areas, I feel like churches a stone's throw away from each other don't know each other,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
which is maybe unique, maybe not unique. I'm still not sure, but it feels odd to me because I think there's so much. I don't know why that is. Why do you guys
I
think
think
that is?
some of them don't have time.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's where my mind goes.
As somebody who's from a rather large organization, you can speak to that.
It's hard to carve out time. You have to be so intentional
Mhm.
to slow
Yeah.
down to connect with other people. So you're going so busy from Sunday comes every 7 days, or Saturday and Sunday come every 6 or 7 days.
Yeah.
And you're so task focused that it can be at the expense of connecting with other people. Just like I just said, like we were in each other's orbit for how many years before
Yeah.
we finally just sat down and were like, how come we haven't connected before?
Right.
And I think that dynamic plays out within churches all the time. And
Yeah.
so it's not an intentional thing, or I don't think it's a competitive thing as much as it is like, oh yeah, I know that person over there and I've got their social handle. Maybe they follow me and I follow them back.
Yeah.
But we've never actually just sat down and shared a meal
Right.
or shared ideas.
Well, even
or
when
been
you
in the
guys
same
were
room.
both in Oklahoma, you're a church on the move. He's at Life Church, and you
Yeah.
probably still didn't cross paths much at
No,
all.
I knew people that went to Life Church, but I mean, when you, like Warren just said, Sunday always comes. It's
Yeah.
like you're working so hard, especially at a church that is a very high production value church, and you're on like a production team or a worship team. I know back then, man, we didn't have time to do anything but rehearse.
Mhm.
The amount of rehearsing we were doing. So we never connected with other churches in the area.
You guys really liked to rehearse back then.
Oh,
I'm
my
just
goodness.
envisioning
Bro.
Andrew Stone
I mean, I've
run
been
it again.
listen. I've
Run it
been
again.
I've been in a couple of those Tuesday
Listen.
nights where it was like 3 hours in, and we're through the first
Oh
song.
yeah, bro. We had rehearsals for our rehearsals. I am not joking. You think I'm joking? Like we had rehearsals for our rehearsals. We would rehearse in a practice room and then rehearse after that for the weekend.
Yeah.
So something just occurred to me when we're talking about church, like local church collaboration or
Yeah.
getting to know each other, or whatever. I feel like we think it should be better, but as I'm thinking about it, it's not like the 10-minute oil change guy in town is going to the Jiffy Lube guy going, hey, what are you guys doing to effectively reach your customers? Or the Chick-fil-A is not hanging out with the McDonald's operator. Like
Mhm.
So what should the church be different?
Yeah.
And if so, why?
I have a gut instinct, but I'm really curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are. I mean, my initial response is yes, it
Yes.
should be, but I'm curious.
We
to
all
hear
think
your
it
guys'
should be.
response. Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's not. So why should it be? And what are we doing? What could we do to make it better?
Well, I think first off, we have a common mission between all of our churches, and we have a common enemy, and the enemy is not each other's churches.
Yeah.
And enemy is probably too strong of a word, but I go back to the competition thing. Like we're not, Chick-fil-A and McDonald's, what makes their businesses successful or determines the efficacy of what they're doing is how many customers they can get in through the door. what makes us successful is not how many churchgoers I can get through the door, but it's really how many of the lost can we reach. And if we were to fill up all the pews or all the seats that were in existence right now in all of our venues, even in Texas, where there's a church on every corner, there would still not be enough venues built to reach all the people that exist in these communities. So if we have more quote unquote market demand or market need, then there are capacity for us to reach, then there's a total opportunity for us to partner together and reach people. And so that to me is one reason why we should partner together and share ideas. But then the other thing is just the encouragement of other believers. You know, when you are meeting with people who are like-minded in ministry, who share your value set and who are on the same mission that you're on to reach the people who don't know Christ and who don't yet have a relationship with him and their lives haven't been yet transformed, then you have this like-minded journey that you're on. And you have people that understand things that, you know, can share your burden, share your journey in a way that is unique. And so when you do life in isolation, you do ministry in isolation, that's where it can become a very lonely spot. And honestly, the enemy can work to become divisive within the church. And so the more unity that we can have across our congregations, the more effective I think we can become in the capital C church and with our mission as a whole.
Yeah, that's good. That's one of the reasons why I'm excited about this event tomorrow is for a reason, is to bring all these churches together. We used to, when I lived in St. Louis, I was at a church called Element Church. I went there to help plant that church years ago. And we had a bit of a cohort, I guess, in that city where a lot of the local churches, we'd get together, it was worship and production teams, and we would share ideas. Larger churches would learn from smaller churches because the smaller churches, they had to be a little more scrappy, and they honestly had some knowledge in some things that we forgot because we were so specialized. And it was an amazing time. We would get together once a month. We would share stories, and we would share our struggles, and we would share tensions or maybe challenges we were facing week to week. But it was amazing to see the local churches push each other forward. When that started, you started to see even like pastors start to collaborate and get together. It's like, you know, you're called to reach the city, the same city, and you would expect that you'd be on the same team. Naturally, I'm going to reach a crowd that Warren is not going to reach, and vice versa. You know, people are going to attract different people. And so, man, I think it's really important for churches to be different, but also learn from each other and pull and grow.
And we should celebrate those differences.
Yeah.
Like the different ministries that exist within our communities are not in conflict, but they're in complement with each other. And we should lean into how we're wired and what God's specifically called us to do, and then encourage and champion each other. You know, and that's the thing. That's where encourage and champion each other. That's where this like connecting with other churches and other ministries is so powerful, because again, you get this idea sharing, but then you also get this like bond that happens where, okay, we're all doing this work together because we're tilling the same soil. When you're in Texas and it's like, okay, it's just assumed I could plant a church and a few hundred people are going to show up. That's great. But then I think of the Pacific Northwest. I have a pastor friend of mine who's overseeing several churches that are planting in Oregon. And that's tough.
That's a mission field.
That's tough soil to till.
Yeah.
And if you can have a group of pastors that are encouraging each other in that work and sharing ideas of how to reach that specific community who also needs Jesus just as much as the people here in DFW, just as much as the people in OKC, just as much as the people across the world.
Yeah.
I was just talking to
Ryan, which is part of Life Church in Colorado. You know, it's Life Church North Denver campus, and we were talking about that a while back. That Denver's a different. It's not Oklahoma. You know, it's not like the other Life churches in terms of the culture of that city. You know, it's a different place. California, it's not like Texas or Oklahoma. You know, so So different, man. All these, we joke around all the time. We're like, there's Cali Christians, because we work with people all over the country, and we see church in so many different ways and so many different expressions. So there's like the Cali Christians
with Lululemon bags and just craziness. Crazy.
Men carrying
Shout out to those
crossbody
guys out
bags.
there wearing
No.
crossbodies.
Hey,
I'm for you.
I'm not mad at the crossbody guy, obviously. But yeah, man, there's like the Dallas Christians, the Fort Worth. I need to be careful.
Yeah,
I don't call Dallas and
Yeah, I
Fort
still
Worth
don't get it.
They're
cross the
definitely two
streams.
different cities.
That's
Yeah.
two
Still don't
different
get it.
pockets.
They're always said together. They're one thing. And I just got here. So.
You just lost half of our
You're
listeners.
gonna get a bunch of hate mail.
I'm kidding. That was my controversial statement for today.
I mean, just DFW.
Yeah, exactly. DFW.
You said it earlier, DFW Metroplex. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, the Metroplex.
Yeah, the Dallas Metroplex is what they call it.
It's like Dallas, Fort Worth, not the same thing, but they're always said together.
It's the name of the airport.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
different conversation.
That sounds like some church politics. Organizationally separate,
Right. But under one,
is the DFW.
under one
Yeah,
umbrella,
and if you
yeah.
think through it from a central point
Yeah.
of view, then. Yeah,
But
anyway.
if the bylaws state,
That's funny.
Oh, man.
It is interesting, we have so many churches, and I'm ashamed to admit this. There was one point in time where I thought we had just enough churches. We didn't need any more churches. And I've totally come to a different point in life where I'm realizing we desperately need more churches. I'm really curious. That's my vantage point, at least. I'm really curious to hear from you, Warren, from your seat at Life Church. I think there's a lot of people out there that would say, we're fine. We don't need more churches. Look at Life Church. Like they're crushing it. We just need more people like that doing it. And what is the good? I think there's maybe some encouragement to provide those folks who are leading 200 person, 300 person, 500 person community churches, or the church planter who's going, man, this is what I feel like God is calling me to do for my community. But man, the journey of doing this and what somebody like they're doing down the street, what would your encouragement be to somebody in that position who's maybe going, do I need to plant another church when there's Life Church down the street or Elevation or these other large churches?
yes, you need to plant. That's the short answer. It's not that we need more churches, but we do need more authenticity right now.
Yeah.
And I would say that it's not a comparison game. I would say that there are different, you said expressions, right? And there are different people that Life Church will not reach that maybe your expression of church will reach. And it will take all types of expressions and aesthetics of our faith to reach a lost world. And to go back to one statement you said, I feel like God is calling me to do X. If you've resolved that in your spirit, God's calling me to do this, then I would walk out in obedience, regardless of, well, there's a big church over here. Maybe I'm only going to reach 50 for this season, or maybe I'm only going to reach 100 for this season. Well, that might be the 100 that God's calling you to do that. I would obey that. And regardless of, well, the size of your ministry, attendance-wise, has nothing whatsoever to do with the efficacy of it. Sometimes we look at numbers this way, and we don't look at growth this way. And we compare somebody's story to our own story, and we think, oh, well, in the kingdom of God, metrics are totally different, right? And so we just have to be comfortable with the story that God's called us to write and to follow that calling in obedience. So I would absolutely say there's not enough churches, and we should keep pressing forward into what he's called us to do.
So one thing that's interesting is, and this is just a random, I have a lot of random thoughts and random statistics in my head. In 1950, the 50s, there were as many.
Were you
I was not
23, 24?
We're going to get there.
I was not yet born, but in the 50s, there were as many United Methodist churches in America as there were U.S. post offices.
Yeah.
That's every zip code. There was a United Methodist church. So there were a lot of churches, right? Because then there were also maybe that many Baptist churches, that many Presbyterian churches. It's never been a lack of churches. I think there was always a place for somebody in America who wanted to go worship. I think your point about efficacy, though, because all those mainline denominations are literally dying. So there is a thing. It's like we don't need more buildings because the buildings most of them are still there. So we just need ministries that can provide effective impact and actually lead people to an actual relationship with Jesus. So it's interesting. It's like we need more good churches.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah,
I don't want to.
And so how do you say that without passing
Exactly.
any sort of judgment?
Right, because a lot of those
there's a difference
churches
between
had a lot of
observation
influence.
and judgment. And so what
Yeah.
we're observing is there's a lot of empty seats in a lot of denominations that are retracting.
Yeah.
Yeah, church. We're talking about this yesterday with some friends. Church is very different now than it was when I was a kid, and I was a kid longer than most of you probably realize that are watching this. But
Max, he looks the youngest of any of us.
Well, he is the youngest here for sure. Yeah.
I'm older than I look. But we're just talking about this, man. And church, when I was a kid, like if you threw around numbers like 150 people,
It's a big church.
or
Yeah.
500,
Yeah.
let alone 1,000, it was going to be like, what? That's crazy. Now you have church planners that, start up, they launch a church in Oklahoma or Texas or anywhere. And first weekend, they have 1,000 people show up in places. I'm like, that's crazy.
Nuts.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. But church is different. It's when I was a kid, you went to church, it was a smaller community. There was more discipleship. It was authentic, as you would say. It was just different. And I'm not saying that like, oh, it was way better or anything like that, but it was just a different time.
Yeah.
A different type of church. And so I think those expressions, man, have changed a lot. I think what I do miss is there was an authenticity and there was a push for people to discover and find a relationship with God for themselves. And there was also a push for people to understand the Bible themselves. I remember the pastors that I grew up going to churches. I remember pastors would get up and they would say from the pulpit, they would challenge people to challenge them by going and researching the Bible for themselves. Don't just take their word for it. So that is something I honestly don't hear as much anymore. So the expressions, the styles, all the things have changed so much. So, but I still am a fan of, it's funny, I've been a part of churches that are massive churches and fast growing churches. Nothing wrong with them at all. But there's something about the smaller communities where people know you, they know what you're dealing with, they know what your struggles are, they know who your family is. To me, that says authenticity.
Yeah.
You both have said authenticity. You actually opened with it, and it really stuck with me. And I'm curious if you could expand a little bit more when you say it might not necessarily be that we're desperate for more churches, but maybe more authentic churches.
Mm-hmm.
What do you unpack that a little bit more, Warren?
I think churches should be wholehearted going towards what they are called to do and be almost unapologetic towards it. Like sometimes there's this is our DNA, but we go against kind of what our DNA is or what our ultimate mission is because we want to become all things to all people. And it almost waters down like the mission or the original vision or idea behind the church. For example, you talked about, I'm not going to reach certain groups maybe as effectively as you would.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation with a senior leader at Life Church just 2 weeks ago. And we were talking about a certain thing that we could do to reach a specific group of people, but it's a very small subset of people, but there could be a lot of resources put behind a project. It would be very noble to do, be a very good project, but it'd be a lot of resource to go behind this that would ultimately reach not a lot of people. And he said, look, I'm six. I think he's 6'7". He's like, I'm 6'7". He played college ball, basketball. He's like, Southwest is not going to change their seats for me, right? He's like, they got an airline seat that fits me. Doesn't fit me well, but fits most people. And he was like, that's their customer. That's their business model. That's what they do. He goes, why would we, like, we do video teaching really well. We do 4 things. We have 5 things we do really well. And this doesn't probably fit that dynamic, though it'd be great to do. It doesn't mean we don't value that segment of people or that they're not welcome here, but we're not equipped well to minister to them. So it would take us off course. So we're going to stay committed to what we do. That's like authenticity to me. Like, we're committed to, like, this is what we do really well. And so that's what fuels how we are able to minister really, really well to the demographic that we feel called to go after.
Right.
And there may be another church that feels very passionate about that and has the right resources and the right ministry structure and the right ability to go after that specific community and can resource that better. And it would be authentic to who they are instead of us trying to become that to them.
That's good, man.
And so how many churches are like, okay, we're going to have 28 different ministry avenues that we're all going to try to resource really, really. And again, this is not me from a judgmental point. This is an observation that I've made, but just we're not going to be able to resource any of them super well. And we're not going to be able to do ministry on the other side of it super well or assimilate people. But we don't want to make sure anybody's left out. And I don't know that we've prayed about a lot of this and feel super called or passionate about it, but it sounds like a good idea. And so we're just going to go for it. And it dilutes who they are. And it's really not authentic to their senior leadership.
Yeah.
And then it becomes ineffective.
Well, I think, for years I've said the most simple definition of authenticity to me is being honest about who you are. And I think people who sit in our auditoriums definitely sense a lack of authenticity when people try to be something they're not. But not a lot of people can actually put words to what authenticity would actually feel like. But I think as leaders, if we were just honest about who we are and executed a strategy toward living that out, authenticity metrics or the feeling of, or whatever the vibe of authenticity would go way up.
It actually attracts people towards it.
Yeah.
Even people that that's not even my preference, but you know what? I'm actually attracted to it because at least I know where everything stands.
Yeah.
Because I can actually get behind that because
they're being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's at least a vision.
Yeah.
And so without vision, people perish. And when there's no clear vision, or when there's a watered down or murky vision, then it's like,
what are we even doing?
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear from you guys, because our audience primarily is serving on the weekend team in some capacity, worship, production, programming. And sometimes it might feel like in those roles, some of this conversation is out of their control or out of their area of influence, maybe. Practically, what does it look like to pursue a greater sense of authenticity while serving in that capacity in the church?
That's a great question. I definitely understand how, when you're a production leader or a worship leader, how, the point is to really get behind the vision and the heartbeat of the church and what, the church is called to do in that community and whatever expression that is. And I think the authenticity to me is not to spend so much time trying to be authentic within your craft, so to speak, but you as an individual. I think to me, it goes back to, Jeff, me and you've talked a lot about this, about the purpose and who a person is called to be. I think the authenticity should be more of who am I called to be within this community and how can I serve and connect to the leadership and the vision and heartbeat of the church in that way. Because right now in my room, let me say this, in my office, I have written on my glass, I stole this from a friend of mine, but it says unity over preference. And so I keep that in front of me all the time because I have a preference and a point of view and an opinion, especially as an artist. And when you grow and you start to really settle in and who you are as an artist, you know what your style is, right? But that may not be the style of the church that you are part of. And so I think the authenticity is, who has God called me to be? And B, notice I didn't say what God's called me to do,
Mm-hmm.
but who he's called me to be, and how can I be who God's called me to be within this organization
Yeah.
and within this. And to me, that's being authentic. I'm going to be authentically who God's created me to be, and I'm going to align with the vision and the heartbeat of the church that I am called to be connected to in that season.
Yeah. I think you just taught Warren's talk for him tomorrow. So
I looked at my notes. I was like, have you done
he's like, he cheated. Where did he take my notes from? I just
yeah, I man. Yeah, that's so good. So good.
hilarious.
Sounds great.
It sounds great. Super easy to do too.
Yeah, and I think it's super easy, but there's levels to that as God matures and grows us if we allow that refinement to happen, right? Because there's definitely a lot of our own preference that has to die because you go, okay, is this, especially in my service, is this about me?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this truly an act of worship in whatever that I'm doing, offering up my talent
Right.
or my skill or my gift or my ability to God to serve the kingdom, right? And there is that element of, okay, well, I still want to be my authentic self, right? And if it's so out of alignment with leadership that it cannot be resolved, then there is a conversation for you to have with leadership and with yourself, with the Lord, like, okay, maybe this is not the ministry for me to serve under, if it's that disconnected.
Right.
You were telling us a story earlier about your authentic self as a guitar player.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, but it's like, okay, so when I started my career, it's like as a musician and transitioned from rock and roll, Warren, into, okay, I'm offering all of those gifts up to the Lord and going into worship. And I've got at the time, a 5150 Eddie Van Halen stack with also a striped guitar because you have to have that.
You got to have the EVH guitar.
You got that. And so, I mean, I'm playing in a youth group where I've got more power than the entire PA does. And so it's like on 3 or 2, I can overpower and overwhelm the entire band. I remember the first time I click on that channel at a church here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I just remember the sound guy just covering his ears and trying to signal to me to turn it down and turn it off. I'm like, no, this is glorious, and because it was about me, really, and I thought I was, I'm offering up my talents, but really I love the sound of my tube amp. I'd never play with, back in those days, it was the kidney bean pod thing that sounded like it was terrible.
Yeah.
Unless Lincoln Brewster was playing it.
Yeah, and clearly,
Ain't that the truth?
Clearly, those were tools that could be used and leveraged and still sound good. But it was about me and my personal preference, right? Irrespective of the user experience and what drove engagement, because worship is about people engaging,
right?
Not about hearing an amazing guitar riff or guitar amp. And as I grew and as I matured, now 20 years later, it's like everybody's playing these direct hand fractal or Kemper or whatever it is. And I've this year sold my last tube amp. I hardly ever play anymore, but it's like if I ever do, it's like it's noiseless on stage. There are no monitors, everything gone the other way. Would I rather have a big baked out tube amp? Oh, sure.
Right.
But I'd rather defer my preference to serve. And that conversation has already been buttoned up for almost all guitar players long ago. But just on the bigger level, in every area, do we run into, especially as creatives, well, no, this is the way I have to have it because of this. Does the sound system need to be X loud because that's how I need to mix? But everybody in the experience wants to wear earplugs.
Yeah.
for drummers nowadays, and I'll step on some toes, like, we can never even consider electronic drums. It's got to be an acoustic drum kit with $5,000 worth of microphones. Just say it. All the guitar players went one way too, you know?
It's your turn. Hey, drummers,
then-
it's your turn now.
And then, by the way, we're all replaced it with triggers. So
That is a whole other conversation.
It's there are all these different things inside of our craft, and I don't want to compromise our craft or compromise our art.
Right.
But there are questions worth wrestling with of, is it about my preference and is it about me, or is it about all of us experiencing God in a more powerful way inside of worship? And I'm not saying that any of that has to do with any of the tools that we use, because it certainly does not. But the approach is way more important than the tools. And I think wrestling with that approach and what makes the most sense for our communities is worth discussing.
That's good.
Yeah, when I asked that question, it's interesting because I think oftentimes listeners might be going, yeah, like, give me the tips. What 3 things can I do this next Sunday to pursue a greater sense of authenticity? And it's not necessarily handle that transition just a little bit better, or pray it this way, or do it that way. Max, what you were saying, maybe it's be more. Don't do, like, you can't do authenticity.
Yeah.
It's like, who are you? Are you being authentic in who you are? And I think this is,
and a lot of that, being honest with yourself, being honest about who you are, has to happen off stage, has to happen before you get to work, has to happen outside of a staff meeting. It's like, that's between you and God. Like, there may be some things that you're just faking because you're afraid to be authentic even within yourself.
Yeah.
And it has to start there.
Yeah. When I was at Church on the Move, we used to do this conference called Seeds Conference. And Andy Chrisman, he was the worship pastor, global worship pastor. I always like that title.
He's
universal.
worldwide, global,
the world and elsewhere.
Yeah, he's awesome. Shout out to Andy, man. But Andy was asking me, hey, I want you to branch out. I want to push the boundaries on you as an artist. What would you do differently? I want to bring something that's a little bit more you. And, I'm a kid, grew up hip hop and R&B in my neighborhood. And then years later, I learned how to play the guitar from rock musicians at church. So it was like, I'm rapping and singing R&B over these power chords and, Hillsong chords. It's like, what's that? Yeah. And so we were prepping for Seeds Conference, and I heard this part over this song that one of our worship leaders was singing. She was singing a song called Never Once. And in my head, I just heard rapping over this part that we normally sang the bridge. And so he asked me to do it. It worked, and it worked well. And he was at first kind of scared to present this in front of a church that wasn't really stylistically a church. But when we did it, the amount of people demographically, especially age demographically, that said how much they loved it was through the roof. And he came to me and he said, Max, the reason why this worked is because it was authentically a worship expression coming from you. It wasn't, hey, I'm trying to make this cool. It was just, this is how I wanted to worship God in this moment. And so I think there are times where our creative expression or our own authenticity can still fit in at times when it's not even stylistically those things, but it just can't be forced. And I think that speaks to authenticity. It has to be something that is just natural, and it has to be true to the individual and who they are and the expression of God, who God's called them to be.
That's good.
Yeah. Have you guys ever been, maybe you can provide some wisdom here on a situation where maybe you felt the pressure, or even flat out told to pursue a lack of authenticity for the sake of ministering to people or for the sake of reaching people. I can think of a few examples why you maybe think of times for yourself, but I hear worship leaders tell me often, yeah, pastor says I'm not energetic enough on Sunday. And frankly, sometimes I feel like I'm having to pursue a level of energy that is like not me. And I'm really struggling with that. Or I'm a tech guy and I'm being asked to, be this leader of this team and I have no idea how to lead and that doesn't even feel like me. I don't feel like I'm a leader.
Yeah. For me, every single time that has surfaced in my life, it's led to a transition.
Hmm.
But I was also very in tune and honest with myself and who God has called me to be. I was able to identify I can't move forward, be authentic to who God's called me to be, and also serve the church well that I'm connected to or that I'm employed at. I can't do both those things in this certain scenario. So it started a transition. Now, I said started a transition. I said this, I think, on a podcast the other day, is that to me, transition is not a decision or an event. It's a series of conversations. And so it started conversation for me of, hey, this doesn't feel right to me. I think who you're talking about is someone else. Not that they were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They just weren't talking about me.
Hmm.
And so I think we have to be honest enough with ourselves to go, you know what? I'm going to have to take a different seat on the bus or maybe get off on the next bus stop and it still be okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
What you're saying is somebody who really believes what the psalmist writes in 143 of you know God's works and how you are wired, and you believe that you are wired the way you are supposed to be wired.
Mhm.
And then in Ephesians 2:10, that God had all those works for you prepared in advance for you to do. And so that you were built the way you were supposed to be built for the works that he predestined, depending on your theology, for you to do ahead of time. And when you get really, really comfortable with that, then you can boldly enter that conversation of, okay, I don't have to like put on that show or that suit or wear that hat. I don't have to like run out on the stage with like a CO2 cannon and try to be this production hype person to fire up the crowd or be anything other than what I'm supposed to be because I'm wired the way God wired me.
Yeah.
And
Because your jigsaw puzzle piece doesn't fit the shape of the puzzle.
But to the second point, that's also okay because I think doesn't mean what the church is looking for or what the ministry needs is incorrect.
Right.
What they need is probably somebody who is wired that way.
Yes.
But that's the way God created them. And it's just a season of transition for that next leader, next person. The second part of it, though, that I will take maybe the other side of that coin is there is a little bit of discernment on the part of the receiver of that, especially for tech people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm not a leader, especially for most tech people that are introverted. They don't see themselves as a leader. I don't discern, am I resisting that and not wanting to step into maybe something that God has called me to and prepared for me? Because even the way you are wired, you can be an introvert and you can be not this magnetic, energetic, flamboyant, charismatic personality and be the person that can lead and minister to the people that God put in front of you in the tech booth.
Yeah.
And sometimes senior leadership is telling you, hey, I see this in you. I've identified this in you. I've uncovered this in you. And that can make you a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. Because sometimes it takes a nerdy introvert to lead other nerdy introverts.
Correct.
Well, and it's we talk about this a lot and we still haven't talked about it enough, I believe. Warren, I mean, I have a ton of respect for you. I don't know many people who can have a conversation at this level and also be able to tune a PA the way that you know how to tune a PA, right?
Thank you.
And that's what's special about you too, Jeff. And the ability to go hyper technical, but also recognize that this is just a knob and it will just only be a knob if I don't have this figured out.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have this higher level of understanding of why this matters, it's just a knob.
Yeah.
And it's not going to serve people to the its fullest ability. And I think it's so much of our job in tech is being connector of dots for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of this knob might seem insignificant, but this knob will actually play a critical role in spreading the gospel. And here's how that can look like for us as a team. But I think the reason why I really love your pushback, because I think it's not to go kick people in the shins and say, we desperately need you to step up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we desperately need you to take on that role and be a leader of men.
Yeah. We're not coming down on you as sort of hypercritical. We're just saying, hey, there's a huge need and you have a huge opportunity. And I think your point about a senior leader maybe seeing in someone the potential for stepping into that is a huge aspect of this.
Yeah.
And a lot of people hear that and they would go, well, that's not me. You know, I'm going to hang back. It's like, no, you actually have an opportunity to lean in and step up and, you know, become more of who God wants you to become.
And I'm careful with that because I don't want to, there's wisdom and discernment and wrestle in your time with God of, okay, I need to know the difference.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that to be the endorsement of, okay, well, the leader told me I need to do this. And I heard that on the MxU podcast. So I guess that must mean, no. That's between you and the Lord on your next steps, whatever that is. But there's sometimes uncomfortable seasons of growth that we have to step into. And it takes a leader calling that out of you for you to go there.
And you can't skip steps. You have to lean into those moments or else there'll just be another season that'll come around that you will have to learn that same lesson.
Yeah. The times I've tried to skip steps, I've fallen back like another 2 levels. And gone, why did I even wish that season away?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's that tension in both that's so important. Pastor Jeff Little, who's the church that we're having this MxU pop-up, he said this years ago, I never forgot this. He said, anything healthy lives in tension. But there's a second part to that it's that I wrote down recently is anything healthy lives in tension, but also remains flexible. And because if you're always just living in tension, then it's just not good. There's always going to be a tension you have to wrestle with, but there's the flexibility of, hey, I'm going to be flexible to learn. I'm going to be flexible to grow. I'm going to be flexible to maybe get outside of the box and do something different so I can grow as a leader. Yeah.
And I think that's how we frame these things. It might not be that your leader is asking you to pursue inauthenticity. Is that a word? Inauthenticity?
Sure, you can be inauthentic.
Yeah.
It is now.
It might not be that they're asking you to do that. They might just be stretching and helping you pursue something that maybe is untapped.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is, again, using discernment in those moments to see, is this person just wanting what maybe the best for maybe how God has wired me or what he has for me? Or are they asking me to live in a completely different framework that is just not me?
You know, anybody who's lifted weights knows the feeling of you do a set of squats and you haven't done squats in a while. Next morning you wake up and you can't really walk down the stairs comfortably.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you need to stop doing squats.
Yeah.
It means that muscle fiber has to be broken down in order for it to grow.
Yeah.
And the second day might even be worse.
Yeah.
Being sore is not a bad thing in that point. It's like, no, this is going to help me grow. So the next time you go and do that set, you're going to be that you've had. So just because you're sore doesn't mean you need to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And too many of us, when we get in those moments of tension, it's like, this hurts. I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great. Really appreciate you guys sharing your wisdom. If any of you guys have questions, just DM these guys. They'll solve the issues for you.
They have all the answers.
Yeah. They'll just tell them your exact situation and they'll figure it out for you.
Pray on it.
But yeah, this has been good. Really, really appreciate you guys diving in and yeah.
It's always great.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Until next time.
It's been good.
Yeah. We'll see you soon.